See, one of the problems with overhyped fighters is when an overhyped fighter loses, it reflects very badly on his weight class and also on the sport as a whole. Now, I say this in relation to Tyson Fury's recent performance against Francis Ngannou. Now, he didn't officially lose, and on my scorecard, he actually won by 2 rounds. But he didn't dominate the way he was expected to, and many people scored the fight in favor of Ngannou, and I can't grumble at that. It was a close fight. But the reaction to the way that fight turned out has been over the top, to say the least. You've had people coming out saying, oh my gosh, the entire heavyweight division's a disgrace and it's a joke. You've had the likes of Joe Rogan saying that Francis Ngannou can beat everyone. He'll destroy AJ and Wilder and beat Fury in a rematch and all this kind of stuff. He'll beat everyone out there. Because Tyson Fury was overhyped for so many years. And look, do not misconstrue what I'm saying here. Tyson Fury is a fantastic fighter, but people were going overboard. People were saying that he was the greatest heavyweight of all time. People were saying that he was invincible, unbeatable, and he never was. So when you have a fighter who's been built up to the extent where people think he's invincible and unbeatable, and then he takes on a debutant and gets dropped and has a tough fight, it reflects poorly on the heavyweight division, because then people think, wow, if the unbeatable heavyweight champion is getting dropped and going life and death with Ngannou, that necessarily means Ngannou wipes everyone else in the heavyweight division out. You follow the logic now? Whereas if people had taken a more realistic stance on Tyson Fury and said, no, of course he's not unbeatable. He hasn't even become undisputed by beating Usyk yet. He hasn't fought or beat most of the top contenders out there. This is a guy who, prior to the Ngannou fight, had been dropped 5 times in his career. How could a guy who's been dropped 5 times possibly be unbeatable? That makes no logical sense. There have been heavyweights in the past who developed an aura of invincibility. The best example being Mike Tyson. By the time Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas, he'd never been down in a fight. He'd never had dubious decisions go his way, like Tyson Fury did early on in his career against John McDermott first time out. He didn't have a draw in his record like Tyson Fury did in the first Wilder fight. Mike Tyson had an unblemished record. There was no controversy about him still being undefeated. He'd wiped everyone out, and even he ended up losing to a massive underdog in Buster Douglas. So how on earth people conceive Tyson Fury as unbeatable is beyond my understanding. It's fanatics getting carried away with fanaticism. That's what that is. Now, the funny thing is, in boxing, fans and pundits are generally not as sensationalist as they are in UFC. And what I mean by that is, in UFC, every other month, you've got Joe Rogan and various other commentators and pundits in that organization claiming that someone else is the greatest of all time. Back in the days, oh, Brock Lesnar's the greatest of all time. Randy Couture's the greatest of all time. Anderson Silva's the greatest of all time. Stipe's the greatest of all time. Ngannou's the greatest of... It's like there's a new greatest of all time every other month in UFC. It's ridiculous the way Joe Rogan carries on. And the reason it's very deliberate. The reason they do this is so that the audience believe that the fight they've just watched was more historically significant than it actually was. They overblow the significance of so many of their events and fights. And a lot of UFC fans fall for this stuff. In boxing, the ceiling, the bar, should I say, is normally much higher than that in terms of calling a fighter the greatest of all time. Very rarely will you come across commentators and so on who are willing to say, okay, yeah, this guy is the greatest of all time that's currently fighting. They're way more tentative normally, way more tentative in calling somebody the greatest of their weight class of all time. There has been a change in recent years with Tyson Fury. I've never before in my life seen a heavyweight where the bar has been lowered to such an extent to allow him into the conversation for the greatest heavyweight of all time. Never seen it before in my life. I've been watching boxing since the 1980s, and they never lowered the bar this far for a heavyweight champion before. The guy's had 6 world title fights, 3 against the same guy. And there are people running around saying he's the greatest of all time. I mean, it's just ridiculous. If you think that Tyson Fury in some type of fantasy matchup could beat any other heavyweight in history, okay, cool. But you can't base greatness on that because it's just pure conjecture and opinion. It has to be based on something a bit more tangible, such as resume. Does Tyson Fury have the resume to justifiably be called the greatest heavyweight of all time? And the answer, of course, is absolutely not. You got champions like Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis back in the days that had well over 20 world title fights. Undisputed. Fury's had 6 world title fights, 3 against the same same guy. Stop it. But it's because of all this silliness that we're now in a situation where people are writing off the entire heavyweight division, because if they're thinking, well, if Tyson Fury's the best and he's invincible among all the heavyweight boxers, and then Ngannou's just come in and beat him in the eyes of many, then that shows the entire heavyweight division is terrible. No, it doesn't. You've assumed that Fury is invincible in the heavyweight division. He hasn't fought most of the heavyweights out there. And of course, you're also assuming that Tyson Fury can't perform any better than he did against Ngannou. I mean, go back and look at Muhammad Ali when he lost to Leon Spinks, a 7-fight novice. When Ali trained properly for the rematch, he dominated. The rematch wasn't really competitive. Ali won comfortably. You're assuming that if Tyson Fury rematched Ngannou, he wouldn't win comfortably. Now, we don't know because it hasn't happened. But to proclaim Ngannou the best heavyweight in the world or the best heavyweight around other than Tyson Fury based on one fight, that's ridiculous. Was Leon Spinks the best heavyweight other than Ali, or best heavyweight including Ali when he beat him in the late 70s? Evidently not, because not only did he get beat soundly by Ali in the rematch, Leon Spinks went on to have a pretty disappointing career. Yeah, he was an Olympic gold medalist, but Audley Harrison was an Olympic gold medalist too. I put Leon Spinks on the same kind of level as Audley Harrison as a pro. He had a poor career, Leon Spinks. Was no great shakes as a professional boxer at heavyweight. And this is the guy that beat Muhammad Ali in one of the great upsets. Buster Douglas, another example, beat Mike Tyson. Was Buster Douglas any great shakes? Well, prior to the Tyson fight, no. And after the Tyson fight, no. You do get these one-hit wonders. You do get these guys who are just a flash in a pan. All of them are cool, similar thing. Tough guy, great chin. Was he a great heavyweight? Of course he wasn't. He was a very limited heavyweight. His career over the long term proved that. Anyway, moral of the story is we need to stop overhyping fighters, because when they lose, their defeats get overhyped. The significance of their defeat gets overhyped. Again, not that Tyson Fury officially lost, but in the eyes of many he lost, right? In their opinion. And so that gets overhyped, the significance of it. I blame the people who are running around saying that Tyson Fury was the best of his generation and the greatest of all time. It's your fault that the heavyweight division and boxing as a whole is coming under such heavy criticism now. It's your fault because you overhyped your man instead of being sensible and realistic. I've been saying for years that all of these heavyweights, back when they were still undefeated, back when AJ, Wilder, and Fury were all undefeated, I was saying they're all going to lose. And it won't necessarily be to each other. I've been saying this consistently for years. And more recently, I've been throwing Usyk in that mix as well, saying he may well lose to somebody outside of the top 4. Nearly happened against Daniel Dubois, didn't it? If that body shot had been a couple inches higher, or that low blow, should I say, yeah? You don't realize how perilous it is at the top of the heavyweight division. You think that certain fighters are safe. They're not safe. Tyson Fury was never safe up there, and he knew it. That's why he's been so careful with which fights he's been taking. He knows that what people like me are saying is true, despite all his rhetoric. It's not safe up there for any of these guys. Never was. They just created the illusion that it was. The media, the promoters, the fighters themselves in some instances. I never bought it. I always knew that any of these top heavyweights could get taken out on any given day. And if any one of them becomes undisputed and they actually fight all their mandatories, yeah, they're not going to be undefeated for long, especially not in their mid-30s. So anyway, I'll leave it there. And before I go, I want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers to my Patreon page. I cover loads of different topics in my weekly podcast, as you can see on screen right now, from current events to deep dives down the rabbit hole and everything in between. I'm really enjoying the feedback and the discussions we've been having on there lately. So if you'd like to join the conversation, just click the link in the description box below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast, where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.